Good afternoon. Quick video on how to go ahead and descale our tankless hot water heater. This one is going to be the Rinnai hot water heater. So this came with the house. So far all I've done is I've removed the front panel. There's going to be 4 screws that come up on here. There's little flaps, really easy to see. Pop those off. The way that our plumbers put this in was a little bit of a pain to get to when it came to the hot water out. So you essentially have this guy, which is going to be one of the things we're going to have to put the hot water towards, so we can go ahead and put it towards a pump. You can't put that there without removing this guy. I am opting to actually remove the bottom section here, and all you have to do is remove one screw here, and then this guy, and the same thing on the other side, and then the whole thing will slide out. We have a 6699 1/4 water pump, and then we are essentially going to use a gallon's worth of vinegar. I don't have the vinegar out right now, but what we're going to do is I have shut off the gas line coming in here to the house, and then I went inside and I ran the hot water just to make sure that it ran through any further gas. And then I've also shut off the hot water heater. And now what we're going to do, so I currently have these guys turned off. If they're facing this way, that means there's a block. It's not going anywhere. Very simple plumbing stuff. So once I remove this guy, after that we're going to turn this guy, and this is going to dump any water that is currently in the system. That way it's going to be clear. We need that so that we don't dilute the vinegar when it goes running through. That vinegar is going to run through for about a half hour, and that should descale everything. When that starts running through, if there is a lot of scale in there, you're going to see that the liquid is going to turn to a blue purplish. If it's turning pretty clear at the beginning, that means you're probably descaling this too little. If it's really, really dark, you probably need to descale more often. All right, so I just finished draining the water out of this system. So I essentially twisted these guys here downward so they were on. And then what is gonna happen now, so just a quick recap. I've already turned off the system. I've already got everything plugged up. I've turned off the gas. I am going to set up, because there's not a plug out here that's in reach, I'm gonna have to get an extension cord to take our 6699 pump, and then nearest plug is gonna be over here if you live in a D.R. Horton home. And then I'm gonna set that up, put some vinegar, let this guy run for about a half hour, and I'm gonna stretch this guy out a little bit more just to make sure that we can get all the hot water out, all the cold water out, and water that's still in there. So for this particular system, our cold water is going to be our water that is going to go into the system. And for the 6699 and for the D.R. Horton ones, and if you're using this particular hose, you're going to want to use this guy. So he's going to screw here, and then that is going to go into the cold water, and then the hot water is going to go into the bucket. All right, we have our Hannibal Mountain melting liquid. Essentially, this is now pumping into the cold, and then what is going to happen is it's going to filter through and start running through the hot. The hot is going to start coming through here. It hasn't yet, but it will. Make sure that if you're using my 6699, that you have everything set up before you plug it in, otherwise you will burn the motor out. All right, so this is what it's going to look like when it's pumping. Essentially, give it a half hour, and then check on it. So this pump actually does put out quite a bit of liquid. So what I did, because it kept trying to get away from the bucket, is I just kind of weaved it in here. But yeah, it is quite strong if you let it go. So it's been a half hour. Ours has been running for about a year, maybe a little bit over a year and a half. So it's not surprising that it's discolored, but it's not terribly bad. We're going to go ahead and turn off the sump pump, and then we're also going to close the cold isolation valve. That's going to be the smaller one there. Once that happens, we are going to go ahead and dispose of the vinegar. And then if you want to, you can reuse the bucket, but in this case, I'm just going to pour the excess water into the side of the grass here. And then we're going to let that run for 5 minutes. You are going to turn on the intake cold, and then you're going to leave the red basically in the grass or in the bucket, and you're going to let that run cold water out for 5 minutes. What that is going to do is going to flush any additional solution that you still have in your system out. And then after that, you're good to go ahead and close the rest of the isolation valves, disassemble everything, and then put everything back together. Alright, so you do not have to have the water on full blast. I have mine on probably about half, maybe not even 3/4. But I've also just got it going right in here. So again, just make sure that you turn off the isolation valve, and then you close this guy up. Leave this isolation valve on. That way it can run through here for the intake and then come out this way. And in about 3 minutes, it's been running about 2 minutes now, I'm just going to go ahead and shut it off and put everything back together. Alright, so I'm going to very quickly do a little bit of maintenance on my hoses. I've already got that one cleared out. It's already had water running through it, so I'm not going to do anything with it. This one, though, was still sitting in with the vinegar, so I just detached it, moved it over here. I've already locked this guy, turned it off. Essentially, now that I've got this one on, I'm going to turn this one back on. And then I'm going to run water through it very quickly, just so that I can go ahead and clear this hose of vinegar. I'm probably not going to touch these hoses again for another year, so I really don't want vinegar sitting in there for that long. Just enough to give it a quick clear. And that's it. All right, now that hose maintenance is done, make sure you've got both the isolation valves turned off. And then I still have all my valves turned off here. So I'm going to turn my gas back on. And then I'm also going to turn this guy back on. Then I'm also going to make sure my water is good. Make sure you turn on both. And water is going back to the house. As you can hear, it's starting to go through again. You might get some air bubbles going through the rest of the house. That's going to be normal. And then lastly, I'm going to put these guys back on, and then everything will be reassembled, and I'll touch this again next year.